Today we will talk about Stronghold SHX and the Lifeboat Foundation, which includes Tammy Camp. And it also connects into XRP and XLM because, as I have talked about often, Ripple, Stellar, and Stronghold all tie back into the exact same people out of the original PayPal mafia. For example, Jed McCaleb went from Ripple to create Stellar. But right before Stellar was officially created, Stronghold was created as an entity under the name of Tammy Camp. And the individuals involved in the Lifeboat Foundation include Jed McCaleb, can't say this guy's name. That looks like Peter Thiel. This looks like Chris Larson. That's the Charles Hoskinson dude of Cardano. And then you have Vitalik, who just looks like a cartoon character at this point. So I have a lot of posts from the XX account here. Today I learned that Tammy Camp, who came from Stellar and is now CEO of Stronghold, is also a member of the Lifeboat Foundation, along with a lot of other people in crypto, as I just called out. She also learned about cryptography directly from Ralph Merkle, who was one of the inventors of public key cryptography and the inventor of cryptographic hashing. I have talked about that at least one time. He's also involved with nanotechnologies, which I was not aware of that. Tammy Camp and Ralph Merkle are both members of Singularity. Here are some pictures here, and it calls out Ralph Merkle. She was at Stellar from December 1st through the end of January of 2015, so I'm not sure that it was actually only a couple of months. But here is the Action Factory company that created the actual entity of Stronghold as a DBA, which I believe was in 2013. And she is called out here on the advisory board of the Lifeboat. So here's a little bit more on the connections with the foundation. I'm not really familiar with all of these names, so I'll just talk about the ones that I'm more familiar with. So we've got Microsoft and Bing here, and there's a lot of ties from Microsoft and Bitcoin into Lifeboat, which I will talk about here in a minute. So as far as Creative Destruction Lab goes, you've got this person who had a kid with old Elon out of the PayPal mafia as well, has ties into Tesla, OpenAI, aka Microsoft, and Neuralink, which is one of Elon's things. So OpenAI, Microsoft, Bitcoin, Lifeboat. You've got a lot of ties back from Microsoft into Lifeboat, and here's probably the more interesting one because I do talk about the PayPal mafia a lot. So this involvement with future ventures going back into Lifeboat, it appears as if it is a venture capital kind of company that is involved with Tesla, Neuralink, SpaceX, and the Boring Co., which are all Elon things. And then you've got some ties back into that whole Haranos thing, which was the testing stuff that was a scam allegedly, but I haven't ever checked into it a whole lot. And there's a lot of names on here that I don't want to actually talk about on here. So I won't talk about a couple of these things by name for probably obvious reasons, but it does relate into a Bitcoin endowment fund. And we've got the Lifeboat Foundation involved in Life Shield bunkers, which has a lot of attention from the billionaire class, of which I think Mark Zuckerberg was in the headlines about it. I can't remember exactly because I don't exactly care, but it is an interesting connection, especially with the experience of Tammy Camp and Stellar working with Facebook in the past. And the Lifeboat Foundation's disclosed #1 fiat donor is even an early Bitcoin adopter, and that's apparently Brian Cartmel, which I think ties into that Bitcoin endowment fund. Here it is just explaining what or who is involved in the Lifeboat Foundation a bit more. Can't say that name right there, but it calls out Vitalik, Charles, and Heather founder J.R. Willett. And of course, you've got that guy involved, who apparently has a lot of ties into crypto, but I just haven't ended up checking into it a whole lot. So with all of the involvement with Microsoft here, I thought it was interesting that Michael S. Barr, who has been an advisor to Ripple since 2015 and on the Federal Reserve Board of Governors since 2022, has a lot of ties into that organization right there, which has a lot of connections into Mojaloop and Ripple again. And then you've got that guy's advisor and counsel, which that guy was a keynote speaker at a Ripple event in 2018. And then you've got ties back into that foundation, Microsoft, and even Apple, which is interesting because of Ripple's headlines in relation to integration with Apple, which I think was around the ILP, but I haven't kept up to date on that. I'll have to go back and check. And the whole thing about the Federal Reserve is interesting because of the ties of SHX into the Federal Reserve, because they are concentrating on tokenizing ACH payments, which are now worth about 80 trillion per year. And it also ties back into XRP because Ripple is a key investor in Stronghold, and Stronghold Net is interoperable with the XRPL and Stellar as well. And if we go back to Ripple and XRP, they were involved in the Faster Payments Task Force or the Council or whichever one it was that was involved with the Federal Reserve. Now we have Stronghold heavily involved in that. So it's pretty much another example of how XRP, XLM, and SHX are so interconnected, and not just in between themselves, but they're so interconnected into the traditional finance industries and institutions.